Okay, welcome to a grab bag recitation. This was originally scheduled just on sustainable materials. One of our speakers had a personal emergency come up, and so we added two related topics um, on quantum and optics. And then our other sustainable materials speaker isn't here yet. I'm not sure where she is. So we're going to flip the order, and I'm delighted to have two speakers uh, to talk about uh, quantum and optics leading into. So why are we even talking about that? Which they'll talk about. Leading into this is the year of quantum and the role of quantum at Fab 25 and Quantum Fab Labs. So please, Francois.
Yeah, great. Can you hear me all, everyone?
Yep, audio and video is good.
Perfect. So thank you so much, Neil, for giving me this opportunity to introduce the Lego4Quantum competition, which was launched a week ago online. And I'll explain to you exactly what it is in a minute. But just to say that this connects with the Fab community specifically through the notion that the winner of this will get a trip to Fab 25 to present their winning entry to the competition, which is in the general area of building cool stuff for quantum optics with a combination of Lego and augmented reality. So that's the theme of the competition, and now I'll go through, why we're doing this and how it relates, I hope, relates to, Fab 25 and the rise of quantum as a topic in the Fab Lab community, which I think is something Neil is very enthusiastic about. So this is the landing page on a social network called Goodwall. You see the address at the bottom here. Goodwall is a Swiss social network that you probably haven't heard of, set up by some students from our university more than 12 years ago. So it's been around a long time. They like to describe it, or they used to like to describe it before things got very political, as a marriage between, imagine if LinkedIn and TikTok had a child. That's Goodwall. And it's really focused on young people primarily in the global south, um, a lot of young people in sub-Saharan Africa. The numbers are in the millions, not the billions. This is not Facebook or TikTok or whatever. But everything they do is about challenges for young people to get them to think about making a better world. So from that basis, we've set off this challenge, and I'll explain on the way. There's a lot of logos on this slide. In particular, there's Fab Foundation that's very much part of this. Members of the jury, their institutions are reflected in this logo salad at the bottom. So what's the competition concept? Maybe I just, quick parenthesis. This is a direct result of a hackathon we did last summer with CERN here in Geneva. I'm at the University of Geneva. We collaborate a lot with this physics lab called CERN, most people have heard about. And in this hackathon last year, one of the cool ideas on quantum and education, that the theme of the hackathon was, hey guys, could we use augmented reality to transform Lego bricks into virtual components in some kind of quantum optics setup where you could somehow illustrate in augmented reality, superposition, entanglement, ideas like that in new ways, because augmented reality allows you, for example, to visualize a single photon as it moves at a very slow speed, very different from the speed of light. So you can do things pedagogically that you can't do with a real setup, and that's the challenge we were interested to explore in this competition. So it's very simple. We're not actually asking people to code augmented reality. We're just asking them to give us their idea in a 3-minute video, very TikTok-esque, what they would do with a setup of augmented reality plus Lego bricks. Okay, so you don't need an AR headset. You don't need to know how to code. Just convey your concept clearly and convincingly. And then the best entry will get a trip to Geneva in the first 2 weeks of July, which coincides with something called our SDG Summer School, which is using our SDG Fab Lab here at the University of Geneva, which is right next door to the United Nations buildings in Geneva. So SDG is Sustainable Development Goals. That's the UN Sustainable Development Goals. I believe I'm still allowed to use the word Sustainable Development Goals, according to what I read in the New York Times. Anyway, just on to why this is kind of connected is that because of the summer school overlapping with Fab 25, the idea is that the same person will go to Fab 25 in Prague, at least for a day or two, and present their result in a special quantum workshop, which, correct me, Neil, is I think going to be on the 9th.
I defer to
Yes.
Narella.
Yes, correct.
Oh, Norella, you're there. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Norella, who is on our jury as well, confirms it's on the 9th of July. And is that going to be in Prague?
Yes, correct.
Perfect. Great. So that's what the person wins. And there's some other prizes, and I'll come back to them in a minute. I'm going to try and finish up quickly so that we can ask, listen to questions and comments and so on. So the concept, this was the idea that the students did in the hackathon was, your little red Lego brick in augmented reality actually shoots out a laser beam, and another brick becomes a double slit, and a third brick becomes a detector that measures, an interference pattern. Things like that could be done in AR. The students in the hackathon, of course, one-day hackathon didn't get that far, but they got some steps of the way, in particular, some technology to recognize the bricks from any angle and then, put them into some kind of system to do this. So we're not asking people to build this, although we do know that some people are working on building this. We're asking people to have ideas of what they would do if they had this kind of technology available. Okay, to participate, for all kinds of reasons, we have to be a little restrictive. So it's open to bachelor, master, and PhD students who are at any university worldwide, ages 18 to 28. You have to indicate the name and location of your university on the platform Goodwall, which allows you to do that, and the degree you are studying for has to be mentioned in the video. Student teams can apply, so you can have a team entry, but the prize of a trip to Geneva, I'm afraid, due to limited budget, is only for one person who will be the representative of the team. So we're all for teams, but we just can't finance a whole team to come to Geneva. Sorry about that. Why participate? Well, we've announced this through the International Year of Quantum Science and Technology, which is a UNESCO Year of Quantum Science and Technology. And here I have to say there's a particularly poignant link with everything we're doing through the history of UNESCO. So some of you may know UNESCO started as something called the International Bureau of Education, which was some Swiss professor's idea, and it was led by a guy called Jean Piaget, who I'm sure some of you have heard of, who I think influenced a lot of the thinking at MIT Media Lab and elsewhere. And Piaget ran that for 40 years, but after the Second World War, where the League of Nations shut down, when League of Nations adopted the International Bureau of Education as part of its activities, UNESCO was created, and so this International Bureau of Education in Geneva became a UNESCO institute and lives on to this day, and it's celebrating this year its 100th anniversary. So it's 100 years since this International Bureau of Education was created. And I just have to say here very briefly that this is significant at all kinds of levels for what we're doing because of Piaget's influence through people like Seymour Papert and so on what today is, I would say, the Fab movement. But I think it's also worth realizing in these difficult times that when Piaget proposed this in 1925 to the League of Nations, and at first they refused because they didn't see the link between education and making peace, which was the goal of the League of Nations, he said to them, war starts in the minds of people, right? And if we don't get our young people to think differently about the world, we're going to have more wars. And he was right. So, there's a deeper link to many other things. So showcase your creativity, end of parenthesis, end of, comments about Piaget. Showcase your creativity in a global competition, so everybody can see each other's pitches, just like on a TikTok group. And the idea is we also have some prizes donated by Dora Hacks, which is a hackathon platform created by a student who was a summer student at CERN with us many years ago. And Dora Hacks is offering support to several groups of university students who want to set up hackathons after the competition to develop their ideas further. So as well as a prize of one trip to Geneva, there's small but significant amounts of funding towards some hackathons anywhere in the world in your Fab Lab or in a Fab Lab near you. So how to submit. So here again is the link, the QR code. I'll share the slides afterwards. I think I'll send Norella. This is a new set with the landing page. But anyway, you can create create your 3-minute video. Make sure you're not in breach of any copyright rules or whatever. Try to use everything that's open and Creative Commons, and upload the video to this social network, Goodwall. That's it. So timeline, we are going to, we're open for submissions until the end of this month, 31st of March at midnight somewhere. Basically, we'll look on the 1st of April, what's there. We'll be announcing winners on the 14th of April, which is World Quantum Day. It's a big day for the world. Do you know why it's World Quantum Day? Anyone know why the 14th of April? You know what Pi Day is? Pi Day is the 14th of March, right? 3.14, right? In American style. So this is 4.14. It's the beginning of the fine structure constant. Anyway, that's World Quantum Day. It's a big thing. It's nothing to do with us, but we've announced it there as well that we're doing this cool challenge. Here's our amazing jury. Norella is part of it, and we have, bona fide quantum optics experts, people from CERN, people from something called the OpenQuantum Institute, and people from Lego Education, the head of development there, etc. So, and also some students who have been involved in this. Isha, Bethsaida were students who were involved in the last hackathon. So they have a point of view too to share. So that's it. That's the slide deck. We're celebrating the UNESCO International Year of Quantum Science and Technology, and we'll be bringing the results to you at Fab 25 in July. Looking forward to that. I'll stop sharing.
Francois, what does quantum have to do with Fab Labs?
Oh, well, I think our next speaker will speak to that. I think, everything we're talking about here, though, making a laser out of a Lego piece of Lego is, you can do it in augmented reality, but you can do it in real reality too. And the question is, what could people devise and build in terms of very low cost optical components to really demonstrate cool quantum effects? So this needs a marriage between people who understand those quantum effects and people who understand what's possible to do in a Fab Lab. I think our colleagues, especially there's a amazing group in Germany developing all kinds of quantum tools for with a Fab Lab mindset. And so I think there's a lot that will be discussed in this special session that Norella mentioned on the 9th about what Fab Labs can do in quantum.
Great.
By the way, I should say, Neil, that we're talking about quantum generally, not just quantum computing, which, depending on who you ask, is either, the future of technology or just an elaborate Ponzi scheme. But anyway, well, be that as it may, quantum is fascinating. 100 years ago, I mean, the year of quantum is there for a reason. That was when Heisenberg and Born and so on published the first paper on quantum mechanics. So it was really key moment. One of the key figures was Pauli, and he also published the Pauli principle that year too, 1925. So it was a big year, the annus mirabilis of, if you like, of quantum. So I think it's very cool that we're talking about it at Fab 25. Hope that answers your
Just
question.
yeah, just for the record, not a Ponzi scheme, but in pockets oversold. So yeah, this may sound abstract, but it, when my lab worked on early days of quantum computing, we were using hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars of tools. But surrounding you in your fab lab, most of your tools rest on quantum mechanics, the laser lasing, the transistors, switching, even magnetism are all quantum phenomena. And the tools in the Fab Lab increasingly let you access and manipulate quantum worlds. Thank you, Francois, and that's a great lead in now to Benedict.
I just want to show you my T-shirt, if you can see it. It's from an event we did 12 years ago called Lego to Nano. And Neil knows very well that this is an amazing maker, Edwin Hu, now based in Denmark, will be part of this too. So Lego to Nano was started out in Fab Labs, notably with the Shenzhen Open Innovation Lab in Shenzhen. So that led to a Taiwanese company that now manufactures low-cost atomic force microscopes. So I hope that Lego4Quantum will lead to equally cool stuff. That will depend on the rest of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Francois. And let's now go to Benedict.
Sure. Yes. So, hello. Very welcome from Germany. Actually, the place where microscopes are kind of born. Let's see. Okay. So, I was a bit short notice, so I just wasn't able to prepare all of the cool slides Michael would have shown otherwise. But I'm trying to give a deep dive, or like at least a glimpse of what you can do with optics. So I'm from OpenUC2, partially research or group leader at the Leibniz Institute for Photonic Technologies, and also we founded this little company around open optics. And our idea is to make kind of, the Raspberry Pi for optics. I think this is maybe what people would understand from it. And so Edwin, the guy behind all these fancy low-cost microscopes, I think you probably know these kind of figures. It's super cool what you can do with optics, and it's insane what you can find in off-the-shelf components like DVD players, Blu-ray players, and how you can reuse them for confocal microscopes, DNA testing, and stuff like that. And so this was maybe the spark why we have started like thinking about making very expensive components like microscopes and deriving them to become cheap. And if you compare the two, like especially lenses from these Blu-ray players or smartphones, then you see, okay, actually they behave very similar to those usually manufactured from Zeiss, etc. This was the first idea what we have done. So we took, not the lens here, but like a smartphone and replaced this 20,000 euro camera in a fluorescent microscope with a smartphone camera. In that case, it was a monochrome camera, so you have enough light and enough photons to eventually detect that. And then this was, giving us a very high resolution of something like 50 nanometers. So this was kind of the motivation. Okay, can we actually replace very expensive components with something that we know and we can hack and tinker around? And yeah, how can we actually do it? I mean, I think in electronics, this is kind of the state of the art. So people can just tinker around because there's a huge market of different components where you can just get all kinds of programming devices and sensors and actuators. But in microscopy and optics, it's kind of difficult. And that was kind of our base idea why we have created this system and also based our startup on it. So make this whole thing a bit more affordable, available, accessible, so that we can go one step closer to what the Raspberry Pi or the Arduino has done for electronics, but essentially for optics. And so we wanted to create advanced microscopes, not only for professional use, but also for research. And for education, obviously, because I mean, if you don't learn how to use a microscope or how to build it, then I mean, how can you actually get creative with this? And we wanted to do this openly so that other people can participate. And we faced the problem that it was rather difficult because electronics, I think it's a very well-formed community. You can get parts, optics not so much. And so yeah, this is kind of our vision now to change this, make parts available, and also create this, remove this idea that optics is somewhat difficult, because I think it's not. Electronics, I've talked about this plenty of times now, has done it already. So I'm electronics by training, and I used to layout, PCBs all the time. And then once I was done with my apprenticeship, this thing came out, this Arduino, and then it's basically, well, you plug it in, no troubleshooting, the LED starts blinking right away. You have a huge community. And that was basically the idea. Okay, how can we translate this idea to optics? So optical systems, especially in microscopy, are always the same. So you have light sources, you have lenses, you have samples, you have objective lenses, and maybe also a camera. And they follow something like a well-played mix. So you see these focal lengths, they stop one another. So it's a kind of chain of different elements. And so inherently, by design from the Fourier principle, because you always go from image plane to Fourier plane, from Fourier plane to image plane, it's modular. So what we have basically done is just draw boxes around it, called it UC2, so that you can see that too. It's open source, so it's OpenUC2. And we have created an ecosystem with available parts, similar to the library, like you know that from, I don't know, Adafruit and Seed Studio and all that stuff, but with optics. So you have lenses, cameras, lasers, actuators, whatever you want. And the key idea is that it's this 50-millimeter cube just puts it into frameworks so that all the different elements are compatible with each other. And then you can, well, construct arbitrarily complicated systems around it so that you have your optical system the way you want it. So it starts with a cube. You can learn with different elements. So we have a huge community that's growing with different wikis so that you learn how you get to construct a smartphone microscope or actually also quantum phenomena. We have put them together into boxes so that it's like similar to a Lego box, can start with different elements, make them more and more complex. So right now, together with Michael and this German-wide network, we're working on different quantum experiments so that schools can actually not only see that in VR, but also actually sense it. I think this is always very important, at least for me. So I have to kind of feel the electric shock in order to know what electrons are. And then once you have learned all that, you can also put that into a professional context. We call that FRAME. It stands actually for Fast Rigid Automated Microscope Engine, where you have then the idea, well, of learning, okay, what's a cube? How can I combine different cubes, for example, add lasers for fluorescence or lasers for interferometry. And then you put that all together in a big frame. And then you can, for example, automatically move your microscope around it. And a microscope is basically nothing else than a big 3D printer, just without the nozzle, but instead with a more or less sophisticated camera or laser. And then we make heavily use on all the developments that have been made over the last years for electronics and manufacturing. That's kind of what we do. So we provide tools. You can print them on your own, or you can use our injection molded cubes that adds a lot of more stability and reproducibility. And luckily, I think we've put this manuscript out right in time. Well, it was a bad time for everybody else, I guess. It was during COVID, but everybody was stuck at home with a printer. And so everybody was able to print these devices at home. And so now we have a rather huge network where many people are learning how to do stuff. And so actually 2 years ago already, we've brought some stuff to Nigeria. From there, it went all across Africa, and now people are teaching microscopy even here in French, somewhere close to the Sahara, I guess. And I think this is pretty cool because now people have access to printers, even in parts like in rural areas, because it's easier to print stuff than actually ordering something from the known suppliers like Thor Labs and stuff. And then they can share their ideas and learn. And so what we have been doing now with the German-wide network, so just some names, I think it's a very big network, there are also some women, is to apply this network to, the framework to quantum phenomena. And so I'm not a physicist, I have hardly any clue what I'm talking about now, but the core idea is to measure the effect on fluorescence on magnetism. And so what you have here is NV centers and very tiny diamonds here. And these people who have come up with the idea of the experiment, they actually took our design, brought that to the labs, tinkered around, and built this beautiful setup around it. So back by the time it was held by magnets, so you have a grid of different, 50-millimeter spaces. put them on this grid with the ball magnets, with the screws, it's automatically attaching. And then you can directly see where, for example, the laser is going, hitting the diamond here. There's a dichroic, so then you filter out the excitation from the emission signal, because there's a slight shift between the excitation laser, which is green, and then the even more red emission signal. And then you kind of, well, apply a microwave in that case. So it's somewhere around 2 to 3 gigahertz. And then you, while simulating different frequencies, you see a variation of the fluorescence response in terms of intensity. And it's relatively simple to see how that goes. So I don't know whether you've ever done optical experiments in the lab, in school, in university. Usually these experiments, they look, for me at least, quite bizarre. But here's Lego-like principle. You see the beam is going that way. It's focused here on the sample. It's going back. Well, in that case, it's frequency shifted. And then it's hitting the detector, and some open source firmware is then controlling the interplay between the microwave and the intensity detection from this also open source photo detector. And with this, you can then learn how you can eventually understand the spin flip from the different states in your NV center here. So again, without going too much into the details, because I honestly don't really understand everything there, even though I know a lot of fluorescence here. But you basically observe that while you either change the magnetic fields close to the diamond, there's some change in the configuration of the different quantum states, or while you change the different frequencies. And there's also the same effect. Then you can observe a change of intensity over a frequency. So that's what you see here. And this whole thing runs on this ESP32 as a web server. So people can, or students can connect to that with their smartphones, can detect this experiment. And it's actually live data, so they can do that in reality. So they learn whether the experiment actually went through or not. And then you can, from there, digest the magnetic fields depending on the intensity you observe from the fluorescence, which I think is really cool. So you have the full chain of, okay, I have fluorescence, I can detect the spin flip, and then in the end, I can measure the magnetic field. And this is all hands-on. So you can either print this whole thing by on your own, but since, especially in Germany, the teachers always have no time, you can also get that from us now. And we're lucky to provide thousands of these kits all across Germany within the next year. And we can at least provide a little bit of a idea of how quantum phenomena can be working. You can extend this to not only see incoherent, but also time, or like temporal changes, so that you have the fluorescent lifetime of the whole experiment, which is then as an experiment called coherent control, and always kind of well, phrased as a 1-bit quantum computer. And this is just to give you an idea of what you can do with these optics. And maybe just to give you like a walk through some other experiments you can do with the microscopes. So we come from biology, more or less. And so, for example, light sheet microscope is always something people like to work on. So the idea is typically a microscope illuminates and detects through the same lens. But if you observe that, or like illuminate your sample from the side and then observe that from vertical side, then you can kind of slice your sample. And in our cube world, it's very simple. So you have your laser, it's creating a line like a barcode scanner from the side. And then while moving your sample through the focus here, you actually have like an MRI kind of imaging. So you slice your sample and then move your volume through the sample. And you see, like, for example, this fish here being sliced slice by slice. And then from there, you can detect a 3D volume. So we brought this a bit further together with Manu Prakash from Stanford to do that continuously in 3D. So by rotating the whole thing, actually. And going back to nanoscopy, so you can actually, with very low-cost components, compete almost with very expensive components from Zeiss, etc. So this is just a bit of a motivation for, okay, we give you the tools, you have a question or a problem, and you can solve this now with your well, off-the-shelf components with an open source software. This comes together with an open source firmware, just to give you a glimpse, because optics, they have to be controlled somehow. So this can be all done from your browser. So giving you some links, so uc2.github.io and openuc2.github.io. So it's everything open source. So you can have a look there. And yeah, I think this is pretty much it. So maybe last question, because many people are asking us, why are we going open source as a company? And I like to put this figure here, where there's 3D printing, and then up to the point where there was the patent, or the main patent kind of falling down, there was almost no growth. And then all of a sudden, the open source community took over. And that's probably the reason why we actually can build all these devices, because we have access to printers. So this is definitely one reason why we're trying to stay open source and provide the tools so that more people can use it. And then also eventually we reach more people with our optics. Yeah, we'll be in Czech Republic around July. So if you want to come over, you can play with our tools. We will be in Boston, actually, somewhere in June. And we'll be very happy to say hi to you on our different platforms. So we're pretty much everywhere. So, and so maybe just to give you a very brief idea of how this actually looks like. So I hold the Michelson interferometer in my hand now. So this is, I think you cannot see the interference pattern right now, but this is how it looks like. So very easy to understand. You have a laser, you can turn this on somehow here. It's split with one arm and the other, and then it's actually brought to interference here. And I see the reason why I didn't see interference, because of course the beam splitter is put in the wrong direction. But this is how easy it can be to build a Michelson interferometer. It's actually pretty robust. So if you want to tell students how to observe kind of quantum phenomena, that's probably the first start to get you going.
So, Benedict, first, thanks for doing this on short notice. To explain to everyone, Michael is from Bottrop. He's been a leader in Fab Labs Quantum. He had an emergency in his lab, but he's an active participant in the Fab 25 planning. For the history lesson, Manu was one of my students, so there's a nice loop through that.
Nice.
And when you come to Boston or sooner, I want to connect you to the work currently in my lab on modular controls. There's a very natural mapping between distributed control systems and the distributed optics.
That would be very cool, yeah. So if I'm steering my screen, so this is our modular fancy microscope where everything is kind of distributed. It would be very cool to talk about this. And again, so all open.
And then a question about materials and tolerances. So I was going to ask about making things like interferometers. Can you maintain optical wavelength spacing with those materials?
It always depends. So everything is thermoplastic. So if it's heating up or cooling down, then you see effects for sure. So last year I went from.
Sorry, let me ask, what is the plastic? Is it GFRP reinforced? Do you know?
So it's well, the mold stuff here, it's ABS with some glass inside to make it a bit more stiffer. And the rest is all PLA or so the plate here, we put that on, it's POM, and that was the proper English translation. So it's so as long as the temperature is fixed, it's not a problem. Wherever you need some adjustments, you would put some elements, like for example here you see like micrometer screws, and then you can adjust like the tilt. Or if you want to have, like, for example, like the effect of stepping wavelengths, then you add, like, for example, piezo elements, then you can do wavelength stepping easily with, like, you just need to know, like, where I would need to add some kind of, well, adjustment to breathe, let's say.
Okay. But have you been able to, like, see fringes with 3D printed PLA or PETG cubes?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. It's just, I think the camera is not, I think the contrast is not fine enough. So if I tune it now, you will see that. So there's maybe if I have the moment for those who are keen to have a look. So I need to check which screen I'm sharing. Maybe that one. So you go online at openuc2.github.io. That's our tutorial webpage. Then you go here on the left-hand side to, for example, discover interferometer. And then you see Michael's interferometer. And unfortunately, Michael's actually is not here today, but then there's explanation. And then if you go down, there's all the way to, okay, no. Here, how to align that. Here you see already some fringes. If you go down, then you have to align that, and then you see like the.
Oh, that's great. So yeah, to explain to everyone, there's at least two reasons why you should care about interferometers. One is this is ground truth for distance measurement. And so if you make a machine, the highest resolution machines do their metrology by counting fringes. And so it's the best way to measure position. And then if you make interferometers with lenses, you can synthesize a large lens from multiple small lenses. And that's how state-of-the-art telescopes work. And so it's very exciting to get into that regime with these sort of tolerances.
Yes, absolutely. And actually, do I share my screen now? I'm not sure. I think I
yeah, right now we're seeing the fringes.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, and what we have also done is white light interferometry. So we've built a little optical coherence tomography. So then you don't have only like one laser wavelength, but like a rather broad spectrum. And even there you can create interference. So it's just a question of like, if you have like 10 degrees of temperature variation, then you probably see a drift, and then you have to compensate for that.
So OCT, optical coherence tomography, is this really interesting thing. Sunlight, so lasers are coherent. Sunlight is incoherent coming towards us. It fluctuates, but spatially it's coherent. And so you can interfere with itself very narrowly where planes stay coherent, but in the other direction it's incoherent. And then you can use that to slice in 3D. So for example, one of the killer apps for that is making 3D models of eyes where you move this coherence plane, and you can do 3D tomography using what looks like incoherent light, but that's spatially coherent. And again, with the sort of cubes Benedict is showing, you can build these instruments that, conventionally cost $100,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the reason why it's so expensive is like because parts are not really available. I think electronics may have the same problem like 40 years ago. I don't know.
Yeah, no, a lot of the cost isn't the parts. It's recovering costs in limited markets. The bill of materials costs are much lower for these systems.
Yeah.
Any questions so far for Benedict or Francois about quantum or optics?
Well, I have a question for Benedict, if I may.
Please.
Yeah, it's brilliant what you're doing. The example you gave in Nigeria, I think, of people using these microscopes, I know that wasn't the interference part, but just the microscopy. What's the application? What do they get out of using and having access to such microscopes? Is there specific, areas they're using it in?
Yes, so they also have their networks. So the specific network we were talking to was BioRTC, I think the Research Transfer Center. So that was in Nigeria. And they gather in a summer school every year. And then people from all across Africa come to that place, and then they learn all kinds of different techniques on how to use microscopes and also do the biology behind it. And it was also a bit surprising to me. So it took me, I think, 2 days door to door to actually arrive at that spot. So it was very close to the Sahara, like in the northern part of Nigeria. And you arrive there after 2 days of driving. And then you see a stem cell lab. So they have facilities. I mean, it looks different, but it's pretty modern. And so there, for example, we brought light sheet microscopes and also taught people how to actually build their stuff. So they have printers. And so one cool thing was they brought their stuff home and then taught their students somewhere else. And so it's a bit of both. I mean, I think, and then also one cool thing is like if you want to buy a microscope from Zeiss, Nikon, I don't know, you have to have service contracts, and then there are people in Africa, but they probably won't go that far. But if you have a printer and you can just replace the parts on your own, then it's a lot easier for them to actually participate in the research context. So that was also one aspect. Actually, people on that side already had our cubes and printed them. And this year we'll go there again. So it's an ongoing stuff.
So continuing that, Francois, we're working with groups on open materials with local production and fab labs for things like hygiene and water resources. Benno in Peru just hosted a really interesting academic and industrial group. And for that, we need labs in the field to do characterization. It's leading to a very strong drive for local microscopy.
Okay. So yeah, I think around water resources and water quality, this is like the big issue in large parts. And as you say, Benedict, in the north of Nigeria, where you're in the Sahel, water resources are very restricted. So we're just wrapping up a project with UNICEF, and that's put us in touch with UNICEF WASH. WASH is water and sanitation and hygiene. It's a norm that UNICEF and WHO, strive to establish in all around the world. And Nigeria is, a place where they're trying constantly to gather better data on this. And I think it'd be really interesting to connect your projects that are about like the tools for doing this kind of thing, low cost, maybe with student power, and UNICEF WASH, which at this point, they're very receptive to crowdsourcing as a source of data.
And in fact, I realized, Francois, there's a project I'll connect you to on the water resources. Benedict, can you take over the screen share again? There's a great question about can you do holography? Can you show the holography examples?
Yes. I hope that's the right one. I'm not sure. So do you see my screen now moving?
We see interferometer.
Yes. Okay. So if you go here to left-hand side, I mean, you can go through it. There's a lot of stuff. So recently we also have partnered with Seed Studio. That was a kind of funny thing. So there's like this tiny microscope which uses our stuff now. So we've kind of created our own open standard, which is kind of cool. But if you go here to interferometry, there are some more things. So this is kind of one box that has components to eventually tinker around, but you can also do that on your own. So Michelson interferometer is essentially you have one beam that is split into two different parts, but they have a common path in a way. So you have the detector, and you can split this. Then it's called mass-Zener interferometer. Let's see, but there's also a nice diagram somewhere. No, okay, so there's no diagram, but the core idea is, let's see. Okay, so you have two different paths. So here's the laser. This is a beam splitter. That's yet another beam splitter. So the one path goes just like that, and it goes onto this camera, and the other path is like 50% that way. This is a full mirror, then goes that way, and then 50% on the camera. So why that is cool is you have a reference wave and then kind of a sample wave. And once you bring them on to a plane, they interfere. And if you do it right, you can actually subtract the reference wave. So you have a so-called off-axis hologram. And once you do that, so this is a rather simple mathematical operation, you can deduct the phase and the amplitude from your sample, which otherwise would be lost because the intensity is fluctuating so fast that you don't know about the truth of the phase. And so what you see here, it looks a bit bizarre. So on the left-hand side, this is amplitude. This is typically what you see on a microscope. It looks a bit weird because it's very coherent, so lots of speckles and stuff. I think this is like some, I don't know what actually this is, but this here, that's called the wrapped phase. So whenever you see jump from yellow to dark blue, that means the phase, like how the phase is propagating in free space, is jumping from one order of 2 pi actually. I don't know. So the phase space is just wrapped by 2 pi. A bit hard to explain that. But imagine whenever you see the step, you just move continues to one step up. This is then in the end an envelope of a spherical wave. So the microscope in the end, what it can do, or like the holographic microscope, it can detect the phase of the sample and the amplitude here. So I highly encourage you to go a bit more.
But I think also the question was, can you make holograms, 3D imaging holograms?
Well, this is a hologram. So this is seen on the camera, and this is surprisingly a digital hologram. So this is superposition of the reference and
Right.
the sample wave.
No, but again, so this is almost there. This is detecting, but now the opposite. You want to capture the hologram and then project a hologram and make 3D images.
So
you should
one
be able
thing
to.
I can think of is there's this new technology where you can kind of 3D print using holograms. I don't know whether you have seen that one, where so it's called light sheet 3D printing. So if I quickly, so this is working.
You mean the
like this.
volumetric?
Yeah. So if you mean this, so this in principle would also be possible. So this is a light sheet combined with a hologram. So you have then this light sheet illuminating from the side, then you have a hologram coming through the lens, and then you can kind of shape material in 3D. So this is kind of a hologram. You could
But
do
again,
this.
what I think the question was, I'm talking about old-fashioned holograms where you have an object, you capture the interference pattern, you illuminate with the laser, and then you make the 3D image of the object.
Well, I mean, if you were to put one of these holographic films in place of the camera, then you would capture a hologram. So it's just digital. So if you were to have one of these photosensitive polymers that cure depending on the intensity of the light that is facing the object, then you could also easily capture a hologram.
Right.
That works.
Let's see. Two other questions in the chat. First, Shintaro's asking about quantum and crypto. So quantum computers, when they get big enough, which is well in the future, can break existing crypto systems. The issue is it's easy to make small quantum computers. It's hard to make big ones to preserve the coherence. When we did the earliest ones, the radical world-changing paper was we showed 15 is 3 times 5, but it was done with fewer steps than you need classically to factor. There's an arms race where it's easier for the encoders to make longer keys than the decoders to make bigger quantum computers, but it looks like that's going to happen. But that's not that important almost, because there's post-quantum cryptography that looks firm that quantum computers can't break post-quantum crypto. What's actually happening right now is there's a lot of data being stored that's not yet using post-quantum crypto, so it can be decrypted later. But the really interesting thing quantum computers can do isn't breaking crypto systems, because you can make better crypto systems, but simulating quantum mechanics is exponentially harder than simulating classical systems. Quantum space, if you have bits in a computer, classically you need to know the bits, but quantum mechanically you need to know all possible values of all bits at the same time, and that's exponentially bigger. And so quantum computers can efficiently simulate other quantum systems. And that looks like one of the real killer apps for quantum computing. They can also do things like search unordered lists much faster. And so there's some interesting, although this is less firm, connections between machine learning searches and quantum computing. So the crypto is the one initially paying the bills, but a lot of these other ones are more exciting. Now, there was another question in the chat about open source and business models. And there, one of the real inspirations is Prusa. Prusa has done this just right. Prusa is open source. You can download all of their designs, and lots of commercial machines are Prusa clones. You can buy a kit of parts from them and you build the machine, or you can buy the finished machine. And their business has been going great. The business isn't based on the secrecy of the designs, it's based on the value. And I buy lots of Prusa machines, even though the designs are open, because it's so convenient to buy from them. And so we'll talk more about this in the recitation on business models, but open source in no way inhibits a business model. In fact, IBM for many years has struggled as a company, and one of the most successful parts of the business is the open source business they bought, Red Hat. So there's a open source and business viability are really somewhere between perpendicular to there's many really successful business models based on open source. Okay, so let's do the following then. I have no idea what happened to Alicia, but I'm going to rearrange my windows and walk through what she was going to present.
Can I just ask one quick question to you, Neil?
Sure.
Yeah. In your view, for the Fab Lab community, what could be the killer app in quantum? I mean, you know, you're up against all these people making these hugely expensive devices. But what is it in education? Is it you know, is there something that could be done in a distributed way that couldn't be done easily otherwise? Quantum sensing? What do you think is like for the community?
Yeah, I mean that's sort of like asking what's your favorite child? The reason I say it that way is like, you know, nitrogen vacant sensors can be the most sensitive ways to measure magnetic fields that you can use for all sorts of sensing. And interferometers let you do precise metrology, and precise metrology lets you make much finer machines that just sort of, you know, all across everything we do in a lab, it's already full of quantum mechanics, but it's hidden and not accessible. And so, you know, bringing rapid prototyping into what's happening right now in ways that are inaccessible to the labs, you know, I think it's all of them. It's sort of, you know, it if you just look at my lab is full of expensive tools we use to manipulate on quantum scales, in the same way that making things we've now democratized. It's that whole range. And so it's for me, it's not the breadth, it's not any one thing.
Okay, fair enough.
So missing Alicia and Patricia, they've been leaders in Materiome is a platform program website, and they've been leaders in sustainable materials for Fab Labs. So sourcing materials locally, producing and characterizing them. And so trying to kill off plastic waste and trash. And so they've done a really interesting exercise in end-to-end life cycle where you start with plants to make the material we use in the lab, and then the waste from the lab turns back into feeding plants. And so developing all sorts of biopolymers, recycling them. And so Materiome is a platform where you can share open recipes. And so you can start with the applications, you can start with the feedstocks, and then they've got this great database where you can learn how to use things like shells and coffee grounds and algae and turn them into high performance materials. And so yeah, these are examples of things made from biomaterials. Let's see, I'm reading her slides with you.
Just saying that to me, the slides are appearing way too big. Like it's like a section. But I don't know if that's just my.
Well, I'll show you how to find them afterwards. We'll get to the end. So yeah, okay, so yeah, that's all of here. I will. So let me go back to, I'll put in the chat the recitation site is, I'll put that in the chat. And Materium. I'll put that in the chat. And then Francois and Benedict, I can add to the recitation page anything else that you want to add. So I haven't done justice at all to what Alicia and Patricia cover. We'll see if I can get them back for one of the other recitations. I don't know what happened to her, but there's a really good team looking really seriously at where the materials in the lab come from, how we use them, and the life cycle of looking much more deeply, again, just beyond just recycling to actually using the materials as feedstocks to feed agricultural systems to make, a fundamentally biologically circular economy. So you can find much more at Materium, and I'll try to get Alicia back for another session. I have no idea what happened to her. So thank you, Francois and Benedict, for coming in on short notice. Take all of this as inspiring teasers for Fab 25 and take it as an opportunity. When we started Fab Labs, it was radical to have laser cutters in the field. That's now mature. Now the opportunity is things like atomic force microscopes in the field and all of the other tools you're hearing about. And so they're very much in our future. Okay, with that, thank you to the speakers, and I'm excited to see these ideas propagate through the Fab Lab network. At some point, we'll have to have one of the things I'd love to do is at MIT this spring, I'm teaching a class on the physics of information technology, the physics behind all of this. I'd love to turn this into a hands-on Academy class in the future. Okay, thank you, Benedict and Francois.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. See you then. Bye-bye.